a lot lately about stumbling blocks that I encountered when I first started woodworking. And that got me inspired to come up with a list of things that I think might help you guys. All right, so this is my 10 things that I wish I knew when I first started woodworking. Don't cut all of your parts at once, right? So if you're following a project plan, you're gonna get a cut list, and it may be tempting to get all your material, bring it all down to final thickness, cut it to length and width. The problem with this is, especially if you have maybe only time on the weekends to do your projects, you're gonna have a long span of time between the point that you milled the stuff and the point that you need to incorporate it into your project. And guess what? Wood moves, right? So when you go to put those things together, they may not fit anymore. So I recommend looking at the cut list, dividing the project into sensible portions, sections for things that go together, and consider those sub-assemblies. Start working on those, and then as you progress through the sub-assemblies, then finally everything can come together. Just don't do everything at once, you're gonna pay the price. Don't rely so much on exact measurements and use relative dimensioning more. So what I mean is, if you have a project part that calls, I don't know, for a 12-inch piece, in reality, most projects we build, it doesn't matter if it's 11 and 15/16 or if it's a little bit over. What does matter is that every part that has that 12-inch dimension is the same, right? So that's why we use stop blocks and things like that to make sure all of our parts are the same. But typically, it doesn't matter if it's slightly off. Also, when you have a project that is starting to come together, let's say you built a case, you might have to fit doors and drawers within that space. And chances are, after you build this case, what the plan called for this distance here may not be exactly the same, right? So this is the point where relative dimensioning comes in. I just need my door to fit with the proper gaps around it. I no longer care what that total number is, I just know I want it to fit. If possible, buy your material from a reputable hardwood dealer instead of the big box store. Now in the beginning, I used to get all my stuff from the big box store. I'd get my plywood home and it would turn into a potato chip, and then I would buy solid lumber and then it would warp and have bows in it, right? Because it was already pre-milled and then just sat there potentially for months before someone purchased it. I paid more and got less for it. And it was great when I finally discovered hardwood dealers because I could get plywood that was way better in quality, cost about the same, and then, of course, solid lumber, whether it was rough or stuff that was milled on site at the hardwood dealer, it was always higher quality. So upgrade from the home store as soon as possible. Don't waste too much time practicing cuts and joinery. I know it may be tempting. I mean, it's just human nature. We know that if we want to get good at something, we have to get reps in, we have to practice. But a lot of times you could find yourself trying to chase that perfect dovetail joint and never actually making anything. And it takes a while to get really good at that stuff. Right, so my recommendation is to up the stakes, build a project that matters, right? Something you actually want. And then if you make mistakes, you're gonna feel it a lot more. Those memories will kick in as you go through the project. You'll be like, oh, I don't want that to happen again. So you tend to get good fast when you're thrown into the deep end. And here's the good thing, even if the project contains a bunch of mistakes, guaranteed there's someone in your friends or family or somebody who is more than happy to take that off your hands, all right? Just jump into the projects, start building, that's where the best lessons come from. You don't have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to design. Look, furniture's been around for a long time, and it's perfectly okay to take inspiration from other things that you see. I can't tell you how many projects I build and projects I design that start with a Google image search, right? Because I need inspiration. And in reality, how many truly unique ideas are actually out there? Not that many. So I think when you're first starting, you gotta get this design vocabulary working in your head, and then as you build these things, you gain confidence, and you could start to go, oh, you know what, maybe I'll change that. Maybe I'll make that a little wider, add a curve here, as you start to get a little bit better at it. But don't be afraid to take inspiration, and just make sure you give credit where it's due. Try to avoid the bling tools, all right? Now that sounds funny coming from a guy who likes to spend money on good quality tools, and I appreciate good craftsmanship in my tooling, but in the beginning, you don't necessarily need woodpeckers, squares. You could just get a fairly inexpensive set of engineer squares, and those will get the job done perfectly fine. You don't need expensive chisels, right? There are brands like Narex that's a really good bang for the buck, and you can get a nice 5-piece chisel set for, I don't know, 50 bucks or something like that. And you don't necessarily need to just jump right in and have, Bessie or Jet clamps. Look, I don't buy a whole lot from Harbor Freight, but I talked to a lot of people who do, and they say that the clamps are actually pretty good, right? So if you go and invest in a set of clamps from Harbor Freight, even when you upgrade to something else, I guarantee you're gonna keep those clamps because you could just never have enough. Try to buy tools on an as-needed basis. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten email questions from people who say, I've got this, this, and this, what should be my next tool purchase? And my answer is always the same. It should be the next tool you need, right? So the things that you're building will often dictate techniques and tools that you may or may not have. And if you can't find another way to do it, sometimes that's when you have to say, well, I guess I need to get that biscuit joiner or that circular saw, whatever it is. So try, if possible, to let the work dictate which tools you get, and that's going to help you avoid having a bunch of things you're going to need to sell in the future because you don't actually use them. Speaking of tool questions, another common question is, I have this tool and this tool. They're both kind of crappy, so should I upgrade one of those, or should I buy a tool that does something that my tools currently don't do? Well, to me, that's a no-brainer. I think it's always best to satisfy a function that you currently don't have in your shop before you bother upgrading something else. Now, the exception to that is if that something else is a dangerous tool because it's so flimsy or just doesn't work really well, then an upgrade makes sense. But otherwise, I think it's always better to get the function you don't currently have before you upgrade something else that you do have. And there is nothing better than a shiny, brand new tool. But in the beginning, well, I mean, any time in your woodworking career, it always pays to look in the used market because things depreciate fairly quickly. So keep an eye on used stuff, and you might be able to get something that normally would have been outside of your budget, but because you're buying it used, you get a great deal, and now you got a better tool for it. One tip, can't remember who said this first, but I'd love to get credit where it's due, I just can't remember. But a great tip for you is to look for misspellings. If you're looking for something festool, search for festoon. For whatever reason, people like to type that. Any tool brand, try misspellings, because oftentimes people are selling things that are not theirs. It might be someone who passed away or something that a neighbor gave them. They don't even know what it is. They're just typing it online. So look for the misspellings, and sometimes you could find things that other people haven't come across. And finally today, I want you to know that projects are almost never perfect. You really can't achieve perfection in woodworking. It's very difficult to do because of the medium, the nature of the medium. A real important realization I had was when I was working with David Marks. This is like 16 years ago or something. I went to his house, I saw projects that he made on the Woodworks TV show, and I was just in awe of them, right? And then I put my hand on them. So one in particular was a dovetailed bench that he had made. And it was a real eye-opening experience as I ran my hand across there and I felt all the joints. Some of them were proud, some had glue lines, and I was like, wait, this is David Marks, and this stuff, this isn't perfect. And it was like, well, it can't be perfect because it's a natural material. Wood moves, glue lines move, and this is the nature of woodworking, all right? So everything was probably, I mean, it's David Marks, everything was probably pretty darn perfect on day one, but over time, that's just what furniture does. All right, and realistically, when you see pictures online of someone's finished piece, chances are you're just seeing the best angle that shows it in its best light. If you saw it in person, guaranteed you would find some flaws on that they're just not telling you about, all right? The key is to figure out how to fix the flaws and then also how to avoid them in the future. Now, one thing people say that I actually disagree with is the mark of a good craftsman is that he knows how to hide his flaws or he knows how to fix his mistakes or her mistakes. I'd like to change that. I think the mark of a good craftsman is a person who doesn't make mistakes, but when they do, they know how to fix them. All right, so thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.